Hi, welcome to Allison Fine Arts. My name is Daphne King and I'm the director of the gallery. Currently, we're showcasing Ink Alchemy Beyond Tradition. This group exhibition is co-curated by myself and Dr. Susan Beningson, consisting of 15 Chinese contemporary artists from China, US, and Hong Kong. The exhibition seeks to explore the changes of Chinese contemporary ink painting over the last half of the century. These artists, while steeped in Chinese tradition, seek to use innovative material and media to push the boundaries and explore how they can bring this age-old tradition into the contemporary world. Today, we have 5 of the 15 artists with us in the gallery, and they will discuss their artistic practice. They are Zhang Xiaoli, Zheng Chongbin, Tai Xiangzhou, Kelly Wang, and Lin Guocheng. Please join me in welcoming them to the gallery today. First, I'd like to introduce Zhang Xiaoli. Zhang Xiaoli is an emerging artist who is known for her boxed landscape works that present surreal landscapes inside small containers that depict memories and past experiences. She moved to Hong Kong in 2008 to pursue a higher education at Chinese University of Hong Kong, where she received a Bachelor of Arts with first honors in Fine Arts and Biology in 2014. She gained a master's degree at the Central Academy of Fine Arts in Beijing in 2021 and is currently pursuing her PhD at the same institution. She has participated in nearly 30 solo and group exhibitions around the world, most recently in Paris and in London. Next, I'd like to introduce Zheng Chongbin. Zheng Chongbin is a diaspora artist who is well known for his immense artworks integrating Chinese ink, Western art, and new media, which carry out the concept of light and space. Zheng graduated from the Zhejiang Academy of Fine Arts in Hangzhou in 1984 and taught painting there until 1988. In 1989, he received a fellowship from San Francisco Art Institute to study installation, performance, and conceptual art, and received his MFA in 1991. He has participated in numerous exhibitions around the globe, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Brooklyn Museum, Los Angeles County Museum, the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the National Art Museum of China, as well as the Venice Biennale in 2015, just to name a few. Currently, his works are featured at Asia Society Texas and at the Hong Kong Museum of Art. The next artist I'd like to introduce is Tai Xiangzhou. Tai is well known for his cosmoscapes that emphasize nature's grandeur and beauty. He graduated from the Department of Digital Media in Auckland, New Zealand in 2001. Although he had a successful career in media design and conservation, he decided to further his studies in painting and received a PhD from the Department of Painting at Tsinghua University, Beijing. He has had more than 30 solo and group exhibitions around the world, including in the US, Germany, the Netherlands, and in China. And in particular, he had a solo show at the Art Institute of Chicago in 2021. His works are currently featured at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Next, I'd like to introduce Kelly Wang. Kelly is an emerging intercultural multidisciplinary artist. She combines contemporary and pre-modern materials and approaches to create paintings, sculptures, installations, and works that exist somewhere between 2 and 3 dimensions. She earned a master's in art history from Columbia University and a Bachelor of Arts in Art History from Hunter College, City University of New York. She has been studying calligraphy and traditional Chinese painting since 2010 while developing her own contemporary artistic practice. Her works were collected by Princeton University Art Museum in New Jersey, where she had a solo exhibition, Between Heartlands, at the Princeton Gallery Project Space last year. Her works are also currently featured in Houston at Asia Society. Last but not least, I'd like to introduce Lin Guocheng. Lin is known for his works that integrate Western classical sketches with Chinese ink paintings. He studied at the Sichuan Academy of Fine Arts in 2002 and served as visiting scholar at the South University of Science and Technology. Since 2004, he has participated in over 50 solo and group exhibitions in London, New York, Beijing, Shanghai, and Hong Kong, including a major show at the Guangdong Museum of Art in 2020. He was also commissioned to create a large-scale ink painting for MGM in Macau in 2017. His works are currently on show at the Asia Society in Texas and is also featured at our booth at Art Basel, Hong Kong for the first time. Let me now introduce Dr. Susan Beningson, the co-curator of the exhibition.
So Susan Beningson, for those of you who don't know her, is an independent curator who's based in New York City. She's currently teaching at NYU, and Dr. Beningson is the guest curator of the exhibition that I was talking about at the Asia Society in Texas. It's called Summoning Memories, Art Beyond Chinese Traditions. It's there through July 2023. She also curated an exhibition called We the People, Shootings in Samsung, Response to the Declaration of Independence as part of the Asia Society's triennial. From 2013 to 2019, she serves as the curator of Asian art at the Brooklyn Museum, and her curatorial projects during her tenure included the exhibition One, Shooting, and the reinstallation of the Arts of China galleries there. She was also the co-curator of the exhibition Infinite Blue and the reinstallation of the Arts of Korean galleries. Susan is also responsible for the acquisition of more than 50 contemporary works of art for the Brooklyn Museum's permanent Asian art collection. Previously, she also taught Asian and Islamic art history at the City University of New York, Hearst University, and Columbia University, and she worked at Princeton University's Art Museum. And her writings include contributions to the Brooklyn Museum's highlights, pilgrimage and Buddhist art for Asia Society, and providing for the afterlife, early and after effects from Shandong for the China Institute. So with that, I'm going to have Susan join us, and she will introduce the concepts behind this exhibition. Thank you.
Thank you, Daphne. Hello, everyone. Daphne and I want to thank you for making the time to attend our artist discussion panel today during what we know is a very busy Art Basel week. I'm sorry I cannot join you in person tonight. Well, it's tonight here, it's tomorrow morning there. But thanks to Kenzie and Yuri at Allison Fine Arts, I'm beaming in from New York now. I'd also like to thank the artists for participating today, as well as during other events for the exhibition this week. And I'm waving to you all because I feel like I should be with you in Hong Kong, and I'm sorry I can't be there. Daphne first approached me about curating an exhibition at her gallery while I'm still a curator at the Brooklyn Museum. But I had to wait until I became an independent curator for that to happen. It's been a pleasure working with her to create this exhibition, which includes many artists that I was able to bring into the permanent collection of Asian art at Brooklyn Museum, particularly some of whom are here today, including Zheng Chongbin and Tai Xiangzhou, as well as others in the exhibition, including Zhang Xiaoli, Wang and Yang Yungliang. I'm currently, as she mentioned, the guest curator of the new exhibition at the Asia Society Museum at their Texas Center in Houston, entitled Summoning Memories, Art Beyond Chinese Traditions. Kelly Wang, Lin Guocheng, and Chongbin are also in that exhibition, as well as Ren Lai-Kan, Jian, Wang Tiande, Chu Tu, and Wu Zhuhuang. There are 32 artists and 60 artworks in that exhibition, so it's a very large show. If you can come to the United States, the exhibition at Asia Society is on view through July 2nd, and we'll be having a symposium in late May with some of the artists. Or if not, you can read my article about some of the artists on view in both exhibitions in the upcoming issue of Arts of Asia, which will come out in late April. So you figured out that I like working with artists I really believe in and who are reinventing Chinese bead painting traditions with their innovative techniques, materials, and new visual vocabulary. Our exhibition here in Hong Kong, Ink Alchemy Beyond Tradition, includes 15 artists of Chinese descent. 5 artists are being shown at Allison Fine Arts for the first time. Many of the artists here, including Chongbin Kelly and others, created new artwork specifically for this exhibition, and we really appreciate their support. I wanted to choose artists with different backgrounds, some based in China, others, like Chongbin, have immigrated to the United States. Some are based in Hong Kong or Taiwan, and others are Chinese American. I also wanted to choose artists of different generations, so their works would not only be in conversation with Chinese traditions of art making, but also with each other. For some of the artists, it is their first international exhibition. Kelly's work, Microcosm 13, uses twisted strands of newspapers to reinterpret brushstrokes in three-dimensional form. Her Microcosm of Mourning series was created as a result of a personal tragedy, losing her father to COVID, then taking the newspaper she and her mother collected while he was in the hospital and weaving her mourning into the artworks. Her resin paintings and her Cloud Dragon series combine materials, including Chinese ink with Western acrylic paint and resin. Last year, she had her first solo show at Princeton University Art Museum. Also new to Alice in Fine Arts is Beijing-based artist Lin Guocheng, whose exquisite ink pen technique is inspired by his passion for European medieval and Renaissance drawings and etchings. Zheng Chongbin created this dynamic new painting plateau, which is right behind him, where he's sitting right now, specifically for this exhibition. Many of you are already familiar with his current exhibition at the Hong Kong Museum of Art and earlier exhibitions at the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco, as well as a group show at the Brooklyn Museum and many other institutions. Tai Xiangzhou was also in the Brooklyn Museum exhibition that I curated. His work, both in that collection and in this exhibition, shows his inspired and exquisite exploration of the celestial patterns of the universe to animate ink landscape conditions. Many of you already know Zhang Xiaoli, who's based in Hong Kong, whose work on view expands the possibilities of Chinese Gongbi painting. The works on view in Ink Alchemy Beyond Tradition reveal how dynamic and vibrant ink painting traditions are as they continue to evolve. I hope you enjoy the panel today, and thank you to Daphne for including me in this program. And I'll now turn it back to Daphne.
Thank you, Susan, for that introduction. So without further ado, we're going to start the panel discussion. I'm going to start with Zhang Xiaoli, who is here on my left. So I should mention the exhibition is divided into three themes. So the first theme is on birds and flowers, which is in the room over there. This is Zhang Xiaoli's painting that is here on display. And then there's also another one, I believe, that we have on display currently at our booth at Art Basel. Is also a box. So you can see with these two paintings, the slightly different feeling that they both use containers or boxes per se for her creation. And so I wanted to ask Xiaoli if she could explain why she decided to use this motif for her painting.
谢谢大家，感谢大家。我想简单说一下，就是我很紧张。就是我画盒子这个主题是来源于我在香港就是租房居住的这个经验。然后我觉得在一个小空间当中，我好像有不同的这种生活记忆，然后还有一些精神状态，然后我想用就是我的乐高山水的语言，然后把它放在这样一个小小的盒子中，做一个比喻，然后来既构成反映这个这一段时间的这种记忆和经验。
So actually, I was going to ask you about the Lego because specifically inside the box, in a small environment, I noticed that in the painting, particularly on show here, if you look at inside the box, there's little pieces of Lego as well as rocks and trees. So I wanted to ask Xiaoli the significance of the Lego and also about the rocks and the trees and the flowers. Were you trying to kind of relate to earlier traditions with the flowers and trees, and then maybe the Lego, what is the meaning of that?
可能在讲我这次展出的作品之前，然后我想先分享我之前的关于乐高山水的作品。我想到用乐高山水来就是转译传统山水画，是来源于我学习山水画的经验。我很感兴趣，就是传统山水画当中，这种用一些基础的元素，然后排列重组，然后创造无限的世界。这个想法是很传统 件水墨山水的手卷，然后给它转译成用乐高山水的方式去表达，看起来是就是比较传统的青绿山水，但如果看到细节的话，它都是由就是乐高积木组成的，还有一些就是乐高里的那个小人来做点睛人物，然后就是用可能画一些相对小一点的作品，然后由乐高山水的方式和盒子组合在一起，让它变得把大山水变得可以带走，表现了一个传统的我表现了一个经典的中国故事《桃花源》的故事，讲的是一个女人她很偶然的一次很偶然的机会，她走到一片很漂亮的桃花源，然后有一个洞，她经过一个洞窟进入到一个似真似幻与外界隔绝的世界。然后在这件作品中，我特别就是特别画了一个落下的花瓣，它这个景象它本来是就是由乐高组成的，然后它是一个假山水，然后但是因为有落英有落下的花瓣，好像就有一种时间感，就是变成一个似真似幻，既是真的也是假的一个山水。透过这种似真似幻的感觉，我也想回应这个经典的桃花源的故事。
Thank you, Xiaoli, for that explanation. So we're going to move on to Chongbin, and we'll hold all our questions for the artist until the end. So moving from Xiaoli's painting, which was done in a very traditional Chinese ink medium, ink on silk paper, we're now moving to Chongbin, who has still using the ink medium, but has combined different types of media into his painting, and it's created something that's completely abstract versus what Xiaoli is doing. So, Chongbin, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you create qi in your painting, and also your dialogue between the past and the present, because it's an ink show, and ink is very much rooted in Chinese tradition. So I'm wondering how you've taken that tradition and transformed it into an abstract ink painting that we're looking at here behind us.
Thank you, Daphne. It's a great honor to be here at Sanchan Li. And actually, responding to the first question, how to do the qi, frankly, I haven't really thought much about the qi because it's been used so many times. But at the same time, I would say like a vital energy, and in general term, but anything that you deal with the paintings, you know it in a way that with media, with the word comes together, it clicks, it works, and something that has to be connected, and then something has to be alive. And so philosophically, if you think about qi, and it has a lot to do with your mind and consciousness in terms of dealing with the subject and views. But in my cases, I think moved on from the traditional trainings, the learning, sensory or figurative paintings and landscape. Anything has to do the idea of the formulations, how to connect the brushworks and how to use black and white spaces and how negative, positives and all body coordinations. Any of those is, I guess, under the category of qi. But I think as we move on to the sense of the abstractions, I was much more interested in materialities. The material sense itself has a very strong presence. So I very early on was very interested in terms of how bring other medias to jumpstart to both kind of a physical presence. So I use a lot of acrylics. And I think if we use acrylic mixed with ink, making me realize that the textures, the tenderability of the paper, the properties started changing, because that made my attention to the paper, because the paper is very unique. Xuan papers are Chinese paintings, but has a great kind of transparency in a way. I mean that because of the water can always can go through the papers, which means not you dealing with the paper on the surface, but also underneath. And so both the surface become space. And so these graduate kind of approach, and I think the material as agency, the ideas coming in. So then it started expanding my interest in bringing abstractions from body gestures, brushwork into more in dealing with environment, architecture, space, light, and topography, biologies, and all these kind of sense is coming together in many different directions. So that changes the way how I look at paintings. The painting behind that, I usually use a lot of front, back. I do one piece and I cut it and then I reassemble it and then add more in. This particular piece is in terms of mentioning abstraction, because I was walking with Daphne's mention. Space only is the vertical sense because the open space, and I thought, oh, that's great because the side marks are sort of extending beyond the edge of the paintings. And so when I worked on the series of work, and I thought this painting would be pretty much fit because it has to do with space and the verticality of the work. I decided to choose that piece and seems to work well with the space.
I forgot to mention that Chongbin created this piece specifically for the site, which he often does. I don't know if you wanted to share any of the other images of the other works that you've done.
Sure. Yeah. This is called Black Forest. It's a 5-year long. It actually was in the University of Alberta Museum. It works as 5 artists with the environment subject. And by some other curators working in the last 2 years ago. So I did that piece because where I live in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, we went through the drought and has extreme weather patterns and there's so much fires. And the place I live, I never really thought it would be damaged by fires, but it's actually imminent. Right, every summer, the embers drop on your cars everywhere like snow. You can smell it in the air. So I was working on a whole work which is on the floor of the studio, painted on the floor and then casted by painters. So and was thinking about this is all the familiar kind of landscape all to be black. When you drive to somewhere, all of a sudden, like all the black forest, there's nothing left, and it's very surreal kind of landscape. And it's great impact because smell, the burning smells. And so this is kind of a geometry I created a series and I call Black Forest. My impression getting in terms of it's hard to see in the image if you see the actual work. It's just a lot of details and. So this idea from this 5 years ago. This one is similar to the one behind me, but I began. This is a larger scale work, and sort of I took all the elements, sort of repositioning it, and then just started adding more pieces on. It's kind of like roll from the center. Push towards the edge. So I didn't anticipate what edges would be until the piece sort of starting to grow together itself. And this is the same creative topography in three different kind of structures and then the surface. And then I place them together. It's hard to see the black area is not really mounted. It's dry. The ink was crystallized, formed very thick ink, and formed itself almost like the coal mining surface like coal and have a very reflective surface and pick up the light. So that area wasn't mounted. So having what you mentioned, or the rest of the area is not. It's kind of similar to when this is unmounted work, which is how formed and constructed by ink formation itself, and also use water to put a trace on pieces. But the piece is more sort of it's contained, but the piece itself is kind of everything stuff. How the ink and liquid and forms kind of solidify in that process. And this is the in the last 2 years when I had council project at the Southeast Asian Art Museum, and this is sort of the panel by panel, which again it's the I done it in like a whole series, the same kind of piece of the same size of paper. So one surface and the next one, and I all put together and reconstruct, and the puzzle reconstructed in the folding basket. But again, it's all inner structures go out to the edge, and then just, that comes to the conclusion of the workable in the process.
Okay. Thank you, Chongbin, for sharing that about your artwork. I think I also forgot to mention, so it's from flower and birds, we came actually to abstraction. I really wanted to talk about landscape first, but because we were sitting here with Chongbin's painting behind, I decided to jump into the abstraction. But the third theme of the exhibition is actually landscape paintings, and landscape paintings also is a theme that is a subject matter that is very traditional to Chinese ink painting. And so with that, I wanted to introduce or ask questions to Tai Xiangzhou, whose paintings are behind this wall at the end, two landscape paintings where he uses very traditional material of silk on ink painting with ink. But when you look at them, they don't really evoke a traditional Chinese feeling. So I wanted to ask you how you were inspired by the early Chinese tradition, and how did you use that to create something new and contemporary? What kind of inspired you to do that? And I also know that you like to use for your ink like antique ink, something that is from the Qianlong period, which is very rare and difficult to find. So I wanted to know why you decided to use that and how that impacts your paintings versus using something from modern day ink.
我是写，这是我一个跟我讲的，然后让画廊的朋友帮我翻译一下。然后我这个几件作品呢，其实就是说这个故事得从我开始，就是为什么想要做一个独立的艺术家开始。其实我觉得，就是作为一个艺术家，我们为什么要去画画？因为每个人其实从小都很喜欢画画，但是作为一个艺术家，你用什么站在哪一个角度来实现你自己的作为艺术家的一个梦想？这个是我去研究的一个方向。其实这是我的一个博士论文的研究的题目，就是说，因为讲到山水，就是山水呢，在我来看，其实分成2个部分，就是一个山水画的观念，还有一个山水画的结构。这是在这个画廊的2张画。我们其实作为一个中国的艺术家，就是说我们要想到所有的图像是从哪来的。那么这边我放的几张图呢，就是实际上是商代的甲骨。那为什么我会放这张图呢？就是说，如果说我们回到一个人类早期的阶段，就是说所有的图像，它都是要指明在一个时代的一个关键点上要说明一件事情。就是说，如果说我们要讲明一件事情，那其实它选了最好的甲骨，然后在上面刻了个字，这个就是代表当时一个时代的一个当代艺术。那每个时代其实都会有一些关键的 点上产生一组艺术家，就像那个艺术史家方文讲的，就每300年会在中国艺术史上每300年会有4、5个人来引领这个时代。那你看，就是说这是我们其实在中国历史上的所有的图像，它都跟这个建立我们的时代的顺序，包括我们观察自然产生的这个结果，这是一个皇帝的地。那帝王的地其实它是北斗星的一个夹角。那我们观察的北斗星呢，在中国历史上，我们其实通过对北斗星的观察，我们建立了4季。那后来所有的图像系统其实都跟我们对自然的这种观察和理解有关系。就是说我们知道，我们经常讲到龙，那这画里面有龙，这个龙的演变其实是东方的青龙七宿，就是刚才那些星体里面的一个影像。那它经过时代的变迁呢，就变成我们现在的这种龙的形象。那我们看到就是说历史上是唐代的图像，那还有就是这是战国大概2000年前出土的一个日历，就像我们今天的康代一样的一个。就在中国的这个，我们讲中国是九州大地，其实它也是根据这个天象在地上的一个投影关系来建立的秩序。所以就是说在历史上我们看到很多图像，在下一张，包括我们的城市建设、故宫的设计，都是跟这些有关。我们看到就是说，因为历史不断的在演进，所以它图像系统一直在变化，所以都会产生不同时代的当代艺术。这是马王堆的气观画，它就是这也是一个演进的过程。这是天文气象的一个图像。这张画呢，就是我想解释，就是也是同样一个墓里面出土的，它解释的就是说一个人从出生到死亡的一个整个的一个过程。那我们看到这张画呢，就是特别有意思，就是这是宋代人，就1000年以后的人，他去世以后呢，这个也是他就说他死以后是去哪里呢？去山水里。那前面一个图像呢，实际上我们可以看到，就是说这个墓主人往生以后，他是去天上没有太阳、月亮、星星。所以这其实是我们不断的在这种时代的变化中间，山水的图像呢，就是在宋代成为一个非常重要的图像。那在这个再往前呢，就是说这是顾恺之的，就传说是顾恺之的图像。所以说在这个从魏晋到宋代的这个大概几百年、500年间吧，就是神仙和这个人不断的出现在山水中间。那这是鬼子的一张画，就是特别是刚才那个张小丽也讲到这个桃花源，我们知道就是说东晋的人，他们就是作为一个人，他既要做人也要做仙，就是他不仅就是山水呢变成了一个我在人间也要当为作为神仙的一个象征。所以我们有了这些观念之后呢，就理解了整个历史的一个顺序，就是我们就反而要想到今天我们怎么来做自己的山水。这是宋代的山水，我刚才讲了一个观念，就是另外就是说作为一个中国用水墨的一个艺术家呢，就是说对我来讲，我特别注重就是说我们宋代的技术。这是宋代的几张重要的作品。这是我的这个画的一个平面星图，它也是跟这个星空相对应的一个相对比较抽象的一个图像。这是唐代出土的星图，这是其实现在的一个星图。这是我根据这个星图呢自己创造的一所平行宇宙，这一共是9条。然后这个是在这个原来在 Ink Studio 展，然后在那个芝加哥的Art Studio 展览。这是创作的一个过程，这就整个画的过程就是因为这个图像比较大，画廊的画是相对比较小。这是另外一组也叫平行宇宙。那这些图像从哪来呢？因为我是出生在中国的西北，那在这个西北的这个地貌里面，在沙漠里面有很多这样的灌石的状况，那这其实是我的一个素材，这都是一些地貌的。那这就是这些地貌图像实际上被我用在这个绘画。就是这2张画呢，就是我学习技术的一个过程。这边这张黄色的画呢是宋代范宽的，这张画现在在天津博物馆。那我根据这张画，其实是用这张画的原型创作了一个3条棚的画。这是全体。另外那个再往下一个， 就我有一次去这个大都会，在他的仓库里面，照给我看了这张，就是他们传说是宋代范宽的一张画，但是左边缺了这个桥，右边缺了房子，所以就是说在古代其实它有可能都是好几条笔，所以赵就问我能不能把它两边再加两条，然后让它看起来像一张完整的画。这个就是右边这张，就是我根据这个原型创作的，两边加了这个新的图景在里面。这是我创作的这个大的作品。另外就是说，我也是学习这个北宋徐道明一张画，这其实在我看来是一个小的石头。其实是我当时收藏了一个很小的一个石头，大概只有手指拇指这么大的一个小的石头，然后用这个小的石头来转化成一个，用这个北宋的技术转化成一个图像。然后这张画现在在这个 Multidisciplinary 里面的展览是他们收藏。我的分享就时间比较长，我就说到这儿，就是大概。
Thank you, Shanta, for that very detailed explanation into the history of cosmology. So I think that's a subject that he's very passionate about. And if you look at his paintings, he actually has 2 paintings over there, 2 in Art Basel currently. And the 2 works over here, the one on the left is more on his cosmology series and also the dragons that he spoke about. And then the one on the right is more based on a historical context, 2 subjects which he talked about in his slide presentation. So from that quite traditional and scholarly discussion, I'm going to jump to Kelly, who has 3 paintings here currently on show in our exhibition, also part of the landscape series, but also a little bit, not really like a traditional landscape, it's a bit abstract, a bit kind of universe-looking paintings. So there's 2, I don't know if we have, yes, okay. So this first one, the circular paintings, the 2 very different styles, maybe we can show the image of the second one as well. Yeah. So there's 2 very different styles. The first one with the circular image uses newspaper, and the other one uses is multimedia with Chinese ink, but also with resin. So maybe if you could talk first about the circular one. Why did you use the newspaper as a material rather than using brush and ink? What is the image? What is this an image of, and what's the significance behind this piece of work?
So this work is one of my Microcosm Mooring series, and I started working on these in 2021. So this happened during COVID, and I suffered a lot during that period from losing my father to the virus. And I always looked at painting from, before this time, I tended to look at painting from a more traditional perspective or more technique-oriented perspective, like I wanted to become really good at brushwork and learning how to use artistic materials that are more traditionally associated with art. But during this period, I really started to question whether that was true to my own personal experience. And I started to think about the ink and brush and consider how much did I ever use those things, unless I was trying to make a painting. It felt very separate from my real lived experience. So I wanted to start looking at things in my environment, very simple things, humble items like a newspaper, and try to use those things to communicate the emotion and the experience that I had from looking at paintings. So I grew up in New York City, half Chinese, half Western, and I always felt like an outsider in New York, and I still feel like an outsider when I go to China, when I go to Asia, because there's always a gap wherever I am, and sort of in between boundaries. But even when I had that experience as a child, I always looked at Chinese paintings in my family's home and saw them as my friends. So they were a source of emotional comfort to me, and they were very meaningful, and I felt there was so much vitality. I guess we were Chongbin mentioned qi before,
and how it's kind of like a exhausted term. But I did feel that in Chinese paintings, there's this very rich visual language that doesn't exist in a lot of other art forms, where you feel the life experience of the artist in every brushstroke. And you really feel that even though they've been dead for hundreds of years, that they're there in the work because of the brushwork, because it communicates something that was so real to their lived experience. Artists who were painting with ink and brush hundreds of years ago, that was part of their daily life. That was something they used to write notes. Just any kind of daily interaction, and there was brush and paper involved. For me, I was confronted by these newspapers because my father used to always read the newspaper in the morning, and we had a lot of them delivered while he was in the hospital. And I just kept looking at these newspapers that were sort of left over and filled with all these memories and traumatic memories of what that time had been. Actually, can we show the slide with the rock sculpture?
Yep.
So this is one of my works that's currently on view at the Houston Asia Society. And I originally started to think about themes in Chinese art that could be related to trauma or grief. And the scholar's rock is traditionally seen as something like a microcosm, containing all the elements of landscape in a compact form, and something that you could reflect on and see and understand more about the landscape. But I started to really think about how these rocks are made. And the way they're made is they're taken out of the river, and they have a lot of natural erosion from the water running over them that creates holes and indentations on the surface. But people would remove them from the water and continue to carve in to the pre-existing crevices to enhance the natural form of it, and then return it to the water. So I saw these rocks are some very interesting collaboration between human beings and nature, that they work together to erode into this thing, an organism. And it takes many decades for this scholar's rock to take the shape that it finally takes when it's removed from the water. So I started to see these scholar's rocks as being bruised by the environment, being bruised by human beings, by the affairs going on in the world. And the newspapers are like a constant reminder of all the bad news that we were all receiving during that time. So I started to think about transforming those newspapers into something else. Instead of it being about the content that was in the newspaper, I started to see the newspapers themselves as content or vehicles of memory that connected my own experience to everyone else's experience, as well as the environment that we were living in at the time and all the changes. And some trauma, I don't really think that it's possible to heal. Just like the scholar's rock is never going to regain the areas that were eroded away, but it becomes something new and adapts to the new conditions. In making, also part of making the newspapers, and maybe we could go back to the painting, the newspapers and turning them into these works, is that I always found in traditional Chinese paintings, there's something so interesting about the paper. We talk about ink art, and we often don't realize that the paper is so important. If you use the ink on other kinds of surfaces, it doesn't produce the same effect because paper is so sensitive and it allows the ink to come to life. And in Chinese paintings, there's a lot of negative space where you can see blank paper, and your mind can fill in many kilometers of space that just feels that it's already in there. There's a lot of dimensionality, a lot of depth. And I wanted to show that something like newspaper could be twisted and altered in a way that brushwork also twists and alters the surface of the paper, but the paper itself could become a kind of brushstroke. So even though all these newspapers are twisted into strands, they're all different. The paper starts out different thicknesses, or I may leave them open in some areas, so it really imitates the feeling of a brushstroke for me, or my experience of looking at ink paintings. This series started with the scholar's rocks, but I've continued to make these works since those original newspapers were used up, and I continue to collect the newspapers and the series has evolved, and now it also involves Shan paper and other kinds of traditional Chinese paper, because I wanted to integrate those and show the connection between traditional paper and very modern paper. And I'm also curious about the question of whether ink needs to be applied by the person who's making the work, or if it could be ink that already existed on the object, that you then respond to that and allow that to lead the creation of the work. So when this piece started, I didn't really have a plan for where it was going to go. I just randomly put some Shan paper on there in different areas and look at that for a while. And then after looking at that for a while, I start to see that somewhere I need to put something here. Everything is very chaotic. Only at the end does it converge into some kind of harmonious visual story. So each one of these works is really alive, I feel, because of the way that they come into being.
Do you think you can also talk about the other two paintings with the resin in terms of how the material and the art making response is kind of connected with tradition?
Sure. So both the series and the YouTuber series exist sort of in between boundaries or in between cultures, and I feel that's really clear with these resin works. They're actually collage, so I wash paper with ink, and many sheets of paper later I tear them up. And the type of paper I use is called cloud dragon paper. It's much thicker and rougher than a traditional Shan paper. A lot of times it might be used for mounting because it's very strong and stable to go behind more delicate Shan paper. But because of the natural fibers that are already in the paper, when you tear it, you don't really have control over how it's going to go. So the fibers will lead the direction of the work. And I'll take those pieces and adhere them in a more or less random configuration on the surface of the panel. And that will become the first layer of a work like this. On top of that layer, I started to use resin mixed with mineral pigments and chemicals. Actually, the name of the show, Ink Alchemy, is really, I feel like it really talks about my practice because it is very alchemical. I'm constantly trying to create a new feeling or a new visual experience using these materials that are very modern and having them in conversation with the old materials. So after the resin layer will go on, which has colors and pigments in it, I will respond to that layer by adding additional collage onto the surface, and the process will continue on and on until I feel that the conversation between these materials has reached some kind of a resolution. My work doesn't really critique anything in the present situation or the past situation, but I do feel it's a communication or a conversation between what we see now in the world around us, very plastic, very modern materials, everything we use from our phones to our, any other kind of product. We don't really use traditional papers in our daily life. And then I still wanted to have the energy from the traditional paper and try to see how it would respond to these new materials. I put some seals on these two works here, and it's very interesting because you can see that with some of the seals, the paper almost completely disappears when the resin's been applied, and with others, it's still visible. So I'm constantly learning about this new material. I've been using it since 2017, and I feel that it's evolved and changed a lot throughout that time.
Thank you, that's very interesting. So the last artist is Lin Guocheng, and his painting is right there on the left, the large piece, as well as the small piece actually at the entrance of our reception. So two very different styles. So if we're talking about this piece, I guess I wanted to ask you how have Western old master drawings and etchings inspired your materials and artistic practice? Because I think if we look at his work, we can see that it's not only with ink and brush, but he also has a pen, a Western ink pen. So I wanted to know, why did you decide to use a pen and not just Chinese ink? And so not only being influenced by Chinese tradition, but also by Western tradition. And if you can talk about like which are the elements that you've been influenced by in those two types of traditions.
因为我是一直用线条作画的，我发现有一个特点，就是给大家每个人分一张纸，然后拿一根笔画最简单的线条的时候，其实每个人画出来的都会很不一样。而且你会发现，在中国古代的时候，一个画家吴道子跟那个欧洲的一个画家丢了，他们同样用线条涂抹出来的那个图案是完全不同的。就是到底是什么导致到大家同样用一个最简单的工具去创作的时候，然后出来的图像是不一样的，这个是一直很吸引我的一点。这个也是一个东西方差异的很不同的一点。前面的这部分，其实我想那个提出一个问题，是什么导致到我们想象力有这么大的差异？然后第二部分，这是我在创作的一个场景。其实我还有在我变成一个做艺术创作之前，其实我是一个那个软件编程 software designer。就是在这一部分，我也想有一个问题，就是说，什么是我们现在的传统？因为我在我小的时候，我是学习欧洲古典素描的。同时我也学习中国的线描画，然后在我长大的时候，读书的时候，包括工作的时候，其实我很长时间是从事计算机的工作。因为计算机工作，特别是现在互联网世界的时候，有一个特点，就是说所有的元素都可以在一个画面出现。就是在计算机的世界里，时间的设定是跟我们之前历史这个脉络时间的设定，它是不同的，所以所有的元素可以在瞬间里面出现。这就会导致一个我刚才提到的这个问题，是什么是我们现在，或者说什么是我现在的传统？因为欧洲的古典素描也是在我成长的时候是我的一部分，然后呢，中国的线描绘画也是我成长中的一部分。然后呢，这个计算机的，包括计算机，它有一个编码的一个特点是0和1，也是可以对应黑和白。而在创作当中呢，我觉得中国山水这个概念是我们整个中国文化里面绕不开的一个话题。那么我觉得在我现在的一个山水体验里面，因为我们现在都完全居住在一个我们的几何结构空间里面，包括我们现在开展这个话题也是在一个白盒子空间里面。那我们如何在现在的一个白盒子空间里面在讨论中国山水的问题？然后我把我的感受也变成这个创作。大概如此，我想总结一下我的一个内容，就是想象力之间是各地的差异是怎么形成的，然后还有一个问题就是说什么是我们现在的一个传统。
Thank you. I know that we're running over time a little bit, so I want to thank all the artists and everybody for coming. I do want to give everyone an opportunity if they do have any questions to ask them now before we end. Is there anybody who has any questions for these artists or for myself? Okay.
Tai Xiangzhou, did you address using the old ink?
Yes.
Did you talk about it?
可以翻译一下吧。就是我因为这个传统的古代的墨，它这个因为我是用那个丝绢画画是比较多的。那传统的墨呢，它的这种显色性呢是非常的丰富。就如果是用现在生产的这个墨汁呢，就是它这个颜色是非常重，就是没有那么多透明的这个，因为它是化学生产。因为古代的墨呢，它是用非常复杂的一个过程，像熬制中药一样，然后把这个用一个烟像熏香一样，把最上面的那些烟整理下来，然后又经过10万处导电，然后形成
there's another question.
So this is to Mr. Li. So I've been following your paintings for years, and I've recently observed that you've started to incorporate more colors into your paintings.
对的，因为我刚才提到，其实我也是很长时间，是那个软件设计的。那我觉得那个刚才我提到的一个问题就是说，什么是我们现在的传统？因为我们现在的一个视觉经验很大一部分是来自于我们的手机的，而手机包括有马赛克的一个这个图像特征。其实，在我的有不少的作品里面也有体现。我觉得这个是构成我们今天的一个视觉传统的一部分。
I'm asking the process of this creation because it's very interesting between different painting tradition. You choose to use probably drawing paper, and the process, what's the first then second, how the way during your process to have a dialogue between these two kind of painting tradition. 中间的那个过程，这个对话到底是怎么进行的？
我有很长时间在那个野外创作的经验。我觉得当我面对自然界的时候，其实不大会问哪个植物是生长的，哪个植物是后生长，好像他们是同时间就在这样子。因为我有时候我会3-4张画同时的挂在墙上，那我觉得。有点那种感觉，就是说，每张画每天生长一点点，好像就大概这样子。因为我觉得生长这个概念在我创作里面它是很重要的，好像所有东西有可能今天这个长得快点，那个长得慢一点，但是同时生长也是自然界的一个大概规律。
Okay. Before we end the talk, I just wanted to very, very quickly also give a shout out to the other artists who are not here because there's only 5 of the artists here and there's actually 15 artists in this exhibition. So really quickly, JJ Zhang Xiaoli, he is in the abstract section. He works with the elements in nature. So this one is the first drop of water. So he's trying to capture that moment when water was first appeared in the universe. That piece is also his with drops of, I think it's rain. He has other ones where he works with fire as well as light, the sun, that are performance-based. And right there, Zhang Yu, who's based in Beijing, his is a almost behavioral art where he is using his finger instead of the brush to paint. So he every day goes and he dips his finger into in this case, blue ink and very slowly and methodically puts the dots into the painting. He has somewhere he uses red. He has somewhere he only uses water and no ink, but it's still considered, Chinese ink painting. And the artist behind you, Ren Hang, she's an artist. It's the first time that I'm working with her. She's based in New York City now, a young female emerging artist, originally from California. The 2 paintings, the one on the left was actually done in 2015, and the other one on the right was done specifically for this exhibition, and it was a response piece to the one on the left. She went through her personal, it's a little bit of a story of her personal journey. The one on the left, she started doing when she was questioning her sexuality and her gender. And the one on the right was current, and she's now, she's transgender, so she's gone from he to she. And it's a response to the 2. And her technique, she actually paints with Chinese ink on canvas, but she starts painting on the back of the painting, on the back of the canvas. So she doesn't really know what's going to appear on the front. It's very spontaneous. It's an active process with the ink and the water on the painting. She's also Chinese heritage, so she wants to use her cultural heritage in the material. Over there in the landscape section, the photos that you see are by Yang Yongliang. He's a Shanghainese artist who lives between Shanghai and New York currently, and his are, when you first look at them, look like beautiful landscape photos. But when you go closer and you look at the mountain scenes and some of the objects in the photo, you'll realize that it's digitally composed, and the mountains are made up of many, many skyscraper buildings. And it's a little bit of a response to the I guess, commercialization, the industrialization of what's going on in China, and its effect on nature. So the one on the left is with 3 rabbits, was done specifically for this exhibition. It's also on show at the Asian Society in Houston for Year of the Rabbit. And then, who am I missing? Oh, Lin Guocheng, who I think many of you already know, is a very, very important ink artist and the master of ink art. And I wanted to include him in this exhibition, even though he's passed away, because I think a lot of the exploration of what's ink art began with Lin Guocheng. He was the founder of the new ink art movement because he started exploring and doing this already in the 50s and 60s when China was still very closed. He had left China and come to Hong Kong, and he was exposed to Western art and had that opportunity to be able to explore. And so his Zen painting, even though it was done in 1970, is very contemporary if you look at it now. But at that time in 1970 was a huge breakthrough. What he was doing. At Wang, which is on the other side, his also looks like a very traditional landscape painting, but he uses incense to paint his painting. So it's 2 layers of paper. The bottom part is with ink. The top he uses an incense to create extra dimension to it. And for this particular work, it's a new painting that he did for us last year. He added color, which is not often seen in his work. Oh, actually, I should say for Yang Yongliang, it's the same thing. The series is new with the color he did during COVID, because normally his things are in black and white, but he just felt like during COVID he needed to add some color and spice in his life. In that room, who's not here, is Zhang Xiaoli, who I think you can see with the butterfly and the flower, very delicate lines, very fine lines. She's painting very traditional subject matter, but she's really blown them up quite large. And Chu Chu, who is next to her, is a multimedia artist who got a degree in photography, but also then a PhD in calligraphy. And so her 2 works there, the smaller piece looks like just a photo of 2 twigs. But if you go closer to look at it, you will see that the shadow of those twigs are created by calligraphy. So it's really quite amazing. That's an earlier series of her work, and that series actually has been purchased by the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and it's in their collection, and also is currently on show at the Asia Society in Houston. The other artist is Cherry Chuck, who is from Hong Kong. She's on the back side of this wall, so later you can have a look. She unfortunately was supposed to be here. She's from Hong Kong, but she got sick yesterday, so she apologized for not being here. But her work, we started working with her when she graduated from CUHK. And this particular work, she did one for me during COVID, or 2 paintings during COVID. And she started the series because it felt, COVID time was very turbulent, and she, everyone didn't really know what was going on. And the 2 birds that were in that particular painting really looked like they were clinging on to their life due to the uncertainty. But this painting here was done pre-COVID and was done for this exhibition, and now the birds are much freer and happier, and they're kind of riding the waves rather than clinging on. And her paintings are done with a traditional Hongkong style. One last artist that is in there also with the flower, Li Zunyi. His work is this one. His work is made. This particular work is made with handmade paper that he made himself. And if you look at it closely, you'll see many, many logos of luxury brands embedded inside the painting, with this beautiful, beautiful flower. And he's making a commentary on the over-commercialization of materiality of people, where they're so into the luxury brands like Gucci and Rolex and whatnot. And but that the flower, even though those things look really beautiful, the flower is in black and white and not in color. So it's kind of a reflection of what he thinks about all that. And I think that is it. I did not miss anybody else out. So I know we're really running behind schedule. Everybody has things to do. So with that, I'm going to finish the talk. Thank you.